I just want to address some issues that have been playing out in the media over the last few days. And it was with great regret on Sunday that I accepted Vice President Jackie Tam's resignation. Unfortunately, there was an ad that was presented that could be interpreted to indicate that the University of Alberta supported climate change, and many people felt that it might have misrepresented the great scholarship that was happening. In a world where people tend to blame others, to find somebody with the integrity to stand up and to hold themselves to account and to make that tough decision is something, quite frankly, we need more of today. We will be announcing interim leadership changes in the coming weeks, and I know that many of you that know members of the University Relations team will be reaching out and offering support, and likewise to those who know Jackie personally. So before I start, I just want to ask, are there any questions? Okay. So welcome to the 2019 State of the University Address. We can just dampen it down just a little bit. We're gathered here today on Treaty 6 territory. The University of Alberta respects the histories, languages, and cultures of First Nations, Métis, Inuit, and all First Peoples of Canada, whose presence continues to enrich our vibrant communities. So thank each and every one of you for coming today. The State of the University Address is, for me, an occasion to take stock, to consider where we stand in relation to our goals and our aspirations, as well as in relation to the broader context in which we do our work. Right now, that context is in flux. I know that many of you are here to learn more about what we might expect over the coming months as the provincial government prepares to table its budget on October 24th in response to the recommendations of the McKinnon Report. While we expect changes to come, before we consider in some detail what those changes might be, I want to begin today by focusing our attention on why we are here at the University of Alberta. We are here because of our students, our research, and our engagement and commitment to our communities. How we respond to coming challenges will be shaped by our commitment to these three enduring priorities. Let us first consider our students. 40,000 students arrived on U of A campuses this fall. While the majority hail from Edmonton and Alberta, more students than ever have joined us from other parts of Canada, thanks to continuing work on our national recruitment strategy. We have also attracted more international students from more countries, 156 countries in total. With our residence guarantee for all first-year students and the opening up of 870 new spots over the past 2 years, our students now have more opportunity than ever to gain the benefits that come with a residential experience. And we have the capacity to grow. Our students are very bright. We know that our programs are rigorous, academic, demanding, and our students rise to the challenge. This year, U of A sent its 75th student off to Oxford on a Rhodes Scholarship, the 7th since 2015. They are striving to be leaders, whether as presidents of student clubs, members of Students' Council, editors at the Gateway, residence life leaders, or campus rec team managers. They have big dreams, and they aren't wasting time. They are building satellites, creating new businesses, winning international competitions in everything from moot courts to eco-car races. Graduate students are testing their entrepreneurial skills before judges in 3-minute thesis and falling walls competitions, and they're winning. More importantly, they are taking their research into the community, where their innovations are diversifying our economy and leading to improvements in areas as diverse as dementia care and smart transportation systems to art and theater. Undergraduates from every faculty are taking their skills into the community through opportunities for experiential or work-integrated learning. Each year, more than 900 student teachers are teaching in Edmonton schools. This year, nearly 1,700 students enrolled in 53 community service learning courses, helping 190 community organizations achieve their goals. More than 2,000 engineering co-op students are working around the world in industries as diverse as Suncor and Tesla. These kinds of experiences mean that our students are in demand by employers. A study published early this summer showed that 4 out of 5 of our graduate students have a job offer before they finish their degree. And of those surveyed, a full 99% are currently employed. Likewise, our undergraduate students are ranked number 2 in Canada on QS World Rankings for employability. Universities matter because they matter to individuals. And through them, universities matter to the communities and societies our graduates come from, contribute to, and change for the better. Universities also matter because of our commitment to research, scholarship, and artistic creation, and our conviction that a creative, research-enriched environment is a critical part of both our students' experience and our own ability to engage with and transform communities for the public good. Creating that environment starts from our fundamental commitment to intellectual integrity, freedom of inquiry and expression, and the equality and dignity of all persons. That is why we are taking the government's request to develop a statement on freedom of expression so seriously, with discussions at town halls, General Faculty's Council, and other governing bodies. The U of A's reputation for research, leadership, and excellence stems from this commitment to freedom of inquiry and expression. From the humanities to the sciences, from creative arts to business, from health to engineering and beyond, our university rests on a broad base of research and scholarship. Over the last year, the U of A attracted more than $500 million in external research funding. We lead the country in the number of NSERC industrial research chairs and NSERC collaborative research and development grants. In July, 3 prestigious $2.5 million SSHRC partnership grants were awarded to U of A projects focused on how history is taught in K-12 classrooms, the preservation of Plains Cree and Tsuut'ina languages, and improvements to evidence-based testing for children. Earlier this year, the federal government pledged $18.3 million to establish the Canadian Mountain Network, and another $14.9 million to establish the Centre for Autonomous Systems. Our success in attracting external funding is only one marker of our impact. To the broader community, our research, scholarship, and creative activities matter for a different reason. For them, it is the impact on them, on the people they know or the communities in which they live. Because of the U of A's long history in transplant research, for example, someone's child, spouse, or parent is living a longer, happier life. Because of our research on canola, one of Canada's most important agricultural industries, and the many family farms that are part of it, were saved from nearly total devastation because of blackleg disease. Because of our recent community-engaged research, municipal policymakers now have a much greater understanding of how food insecurity is affecting low-income families right here in Edmonton. Across the full breadth of disciplines, we can draw on examples that demonstrate the impact that our university's research is having on individuals and their communities. From this broad disciplinary base, we have begun developing signature teaching and research areas where we have the capacity to tackle complex, multifaceted questions and problems through interdisciplinarity and cross-sector collaboration and partnership. Over the past 2 years, many of you have come together and worked with the Provost and Vice President Research and Innovation, as well as the Signature Area Development Panel, to identify some of our greatest research and teaching strengths. To date, 4 areas have been named. Each one of these areas brings together expertise and demonstrated national and global excellence from across faculties and disciplines. They begin from the premise that complex problems require a shift from individual excellence to collaborative excellence, and finding new interdisciplinary methods of approaching research questions and problems. Energy systems looks at the entire spectrum of how we produce, deliver, and use energy, including the sustainable development of fossil fuels, research on renewable energy, climate change and adaptation, pollution controls, land reclamation, water use, environmental law, community impacts, and many, many more. Researchers involved in intersections of gender recognize that human beings are made up of multiple interconnected identities. This means that major global challenges like inequality, social mobility, human migration, sexism, poverty, racism cannot be fully understood or solved without the recognition of how these factors interrelate. Precision health also takes a big picture approach to health and wellness. Precision health focuses research strengths from across the university, strengths in complex health data, artificial intelligence, computational biology, social and health policy, and others, and it focuses these strengths to improve health outcomes and health services benefiting Albertans and people around the world. Through situated knowledge, Indigenous peoples and place, the University of Alberta is poised to become a global leader in Indigenous engaged research and teaching. This signature area builds on the U of A's long-standing commitment in this area. We are home to the only faculty of Native Studies in North America. We have a faculty of education with a long history of Indigenous scholarship, the long-standing Canadian Indigenous Languages and Literacy Development Institute, and one of the largest concentrations of Indigenous faculty members in Canada. We will build on these strengths to answer some of the most pressing issues facing Canada today. Establishing signature areas like these is new to us. The whole process has been innovative, stemming not from the executive team, but from groups of researchers finding common ground and seeing new possibilities when they come together. Each group is defining their own priorities, governance structure, and programs, and I would like to thank everyone who's involved. We have more than one objective for these signature areas. In fact, when we first prioritized for the public good initiatives, the deans ranked signature areas as number 1 for implementation. Why? Because identifying these areas will help us position the U of A for success in major collaborative research grant competitions, will allow us to create new programs for students and to attract new talent to areas of demonstrated excellence. They also allow us to plan how best to target scarce resources and help us surface new and emerging areas of endeavor that will grow over time. But the primary objective is for our university to play a lead role in addressing major global challenges, and to be conducting research that connects with partners and communities around the world to find solutions for these shared problems. Knowing how our work can and does lead to such transformation is extremely motivating. It motivates me to take on any challenge we face with a strong sense of purpose and a strong sense of what is possible when we work together to benefit our students, our research, and the communities we serve. When we look ahead to the coming year, there is, without a doubt, uncertainty and change. Key leadership roles are in transition. A new board chair, Kate Chisholm, who has joined us today, was appointed only a few weeks ago, along with 6 other members of the board. The board has embarked on a search for my successor, and the Senate will soon be seeking nominations for our next chancellor, and our chancellor, Doug Stollery, is here as well. This kind of change is not new to us, and we have well-tested processes to ensure successful transitions. Being uncertain about the outcome of the coming provincial budget is also not new to us. Each year, as part of our own budget planning, we consider the provincial and federal context, develop potential scenarios, and establish our assumptions. However, I recognize there is a heightened sense of uncertainty this year. With a new government in place, one that has the stated objective of reaching a balanced budget by the end of their 4-year term, we anticipate reductions in funding. We are now halfway through this fiscal year without a budget letter from the province. So the budget that will be tabled on October 24th will likely affect us immediately. Today, I cannot tell you exactly what we can expect. We have not received any specific information from government on their plans for post-secondary education funding in the coming budget. However, it is important to review what we do know. Alberta has a deficit of $6.7 billion and an accumulated debt of about $60 billion after a decade of annual deficits. As a first step, the government struck the McKinnon panel to review the province's spending and propose recommendations for reducing the deficit without increasing taxes. As you know, the report was released in early September with 3 recommendations specific to the post-secondary sector. The first was that government work with post-secondary stakeholders to decide on future directions and goals. The second was to examine the current and future fiscal viability of Alberta's institutions. And finally, the McKinnon report recommended a change in the funding sources for post-secondary institutions. This final recommendation suggests aiming for a revenue mix comparable to that in British Columbia and Ontario. This would include less reliance on government grants, more funding from tuition and alternative revenue sources, and more entrepreneurial approaches to program financing and delivery. This strategy would include lifting the current freeze on tuition. As I've already said, we do not know how the government will respond to the McKinnon recommendations, but we must look closely at how our current funding compares to our U15 peers in anticipation of changes to come. Over the last few years, I have often shared data with you that show that the University of Alberta receives the highest amount of provincial grant funding per student among Canada's U15 universities. When combined with tuition, the U of A spends more per student than any of our peers. Approximately 2/3 comes from the government grant and 1/3 from tuition. Over the last 2 decades, most of our peer institutions have seen enormous changes in their funding sources. They, like us, used to receive about 2/3 of their operating funding from government and 1/3 from tuition. Today, however, slightly more than half of their revenue comes from tuition, a very different situation than ours. Over this period, increased tuition has provided our peers the financial incentives to grow. At the U of A, however, domestic enrollments over the last decade have remained relatively stable due to stable government enrollment targets and the lack of any tuition-based incentives to grow. The result of this high level of total funding is that the University of Alberta has an enviable student-faculty ratio, currently one of the lowest in the country. We need to be aware that most of Canada's leading institutions have ratios that are much higher. This difference underscores that our peers are both educating more students while depending much less on provincial government funding. At the same time, they are maintaining or increasing their reputation for research and teaching excellence. It is this information that informs the McKinnon Report's recommendation for a change in revenue mix. It is clear there will be some difficult decisions ahead for all of Alberta's post-secondary institutions. As we are all aware, cuts in the government grant can be offset by increases in tuition, but we cannot expect our students and their families to shoulder this burden alone. We must plan to absorb cuts and find efficiencies. This will not be easy. We will not act reflexively. We will make careful, considered choices. The balance between tuition increases on the one hand and cuts on the other will be one of the most significant decisions our Board of Governors will make in the coming year. As tuition rises, we must commit to ensuring that cost does not become a barrier to participation by students. It is my commitment that we will set aside a meaningful portion of any incremental tuition rate revenue to establish a significant needs-based bursary program for our most needy students. I am also urging government to increase their support for needs-based financial assistance in this province. We are fortunate in that we have some good news as well. Our opportunities for enrollment growth are strong. Unlike institutions in many other Canadian provinces, as well as jurisdictions across North America, the UK, and Europe, the U of A does not face a shortage of incoming or prospective students. Demographics are on our side. Alberta has a very young population. Over the last 10 years, domestic applications to the University of Alberta have steadily increased by 23%, driving up entrance averages across the board. When we look at the K-12 population in schools today, we can see that the number of high school graduates looking for a spot in post-secondary education will increase dramatically in the years ahead. There's also enormous opportunity in terms of international students. International applications have increased more than 60% since 2015. International undergraduate fees are set so that they cover the full cost of education, and international students do not displace Canadians. We will have the option of growing these enrollments. There is additional good news. We currently have more physical space than any of our U15 peers with the exception of the University of Toronto. We have room to accept more students on campus and in our residences. Thus, we are in the enviable position of being able to consider if revenues generated by enrollment growth could help us deal with financial pressures. Enrollment growth could also help the province meet its educational needs. To meet the national average for participation rates, Alberta would need to open an additional 45,000 post-secondary spaces today. With the projected increase in population, that shortage will grow to about 90,000 spaces later in the next decade. To prepare for the coming challenges, we will need to make substantive changes. We need to identify administrative savings and redesign the work we do. We need to examine program structure, curriculum, and delivery. We need to look closely at academic workloads and teaching distribution. And we need to examine how we're using our space and find ways to use it more effectively and efficiently. Our new budget model and our new infrastructure asset management strategy will help us to do just that. The changes that we are considering are part of a longer-term global trend in public funding of higher education. Institutions in other provinces, as well as in the US, UK, and in Europe, have already faced severe reductions in public investment, along with shrinking demographics. We are in a much more positive position than many of them, and we are in the fortunate position of being able to learn from them. You have heard me say before that universities are among the most enduring institutions in the world. They endure because the people within them evolve and innovate. Our students thrive after they leave us because we've helped to instill in them the ability to ask difficult questions and to dive into complex problems. We have the skills we need to find creative solutions to our coming challenges. While we must continue to advocate for our core values, we cannot fight simply to stand still. We have a responsibility to work together to respond to our changing context, whether we like that context or not. We begin from a strong foundation. Committed faculty and staff, excellent facilities, growing research success, high demand programs, and very strong future demand. We have also been developing plans for attracting alternative revenue sources over the past several years, some of which paused under the last government. We can move forward fairly quickly if allowed to. We can operationalize our land trust, launch professional course-based masters in some programs, and reinstitute market modifiers if and when appropriate. We will continue to build our fundraising capacity. Our philanthropic support is extremely strong, with the last 4 years being our best ever. We have also moved forward on several for the public good strategies and goals that have put us on sound financial footing. We put our own house in order and succeeded in eliminating the structural deficit. We developed 3-year budget planning and are implementing a new activity-based budget model, which provides transparency deans need to see how potential changes in enrollment, tuition, and research activity could affect their budgets over time. None of this would be possible without the enormous work being done on the university's data warehouse, giving us critical tools to make evidence-based decisions. And as you're all aware, we've initiated the Uniforum program to help us understand better the university's broad and complex administrative systems and to be able to benchmark our services and costs against some of the best universities in the world. In addition to these initiatives, major reviews and reforms of our bicameral governance system have taken place, ensuring that GFC, the board, and their respective communities have clarified roles and responsibilities and are working together to make better strategic decisions. We now have the tools that can show us areas of redundancy and inefficiency. Through our commitment to be creative and innovative, we can imagine the possibilities that exist with positive change. I want to stress again that we are being called on to respond to trends that extend well beyond our province and our country. The changes we make now will be with us for decades, and we have a responsibility to handle these changes as well as we possibly can. Most of the choices will occur at local, departmental, divisional, and faculty levels, where decisions about administrative efficiency, curriculum, program delivery, program closures, workloads, all rightly take place. No one is alone in this work. We have colleagues here at the U of A and in other departments and universities across Canada who have been here before. Each of us must reach out to them for ideas and learn from their experience in their jurisdictions. Ultimately, these are not somebody else's challenges to solve. Each of us has a role to play. Like so many of you, I believe that education and research are truly two of the most transformative forces in life and in society. We are privileged to play a role in that transformation. Universities matter because they matter to individuals and communities. As we face the challenges of the coming weeks, months, and years, let us keep our focus on ensuring that we continue to build a university that meets the evolving needs of our students, who are the next generation of citizens and leaders, that enables excellence in teaching, research, scholarship, and creative activities, and that engages local, national, and international communities and partners to address questions, seek solutions, and make discoveries that improve the social, cultural, economic, and physical well-being of many. My thanks to each of you for all that you do for the University of Alberta. Thank you for all that you will do in the coming months and years to work together to enhance this strong, resilient, vibrant, and leading institution of higher education and research. Together, let us continue to build one of the world's great universities for the public good. Thank you very much. So we've got microphones. I'm sure that there are a few questions that you might want to explore with me. If not, okay, let's go. Dylan.
Hi, Dr. Turpin. Excellent speech.
Stand up and introduce
everyone.
yourself so that everyone knows who you are.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Dylan Ashley. I'm a graduate student here. Also a VP academic at the GSA. I just want to say thank you. Excellent speech. I very much like the direction the university is trying to go in tackling this budget crisis by increasing a student-to-faculty ratio. I just wanted to ask briefly, do you have any idea what kind of growth rate we might see in students in the next few years? Like, what is a target you're going for?
No targets have been established, and that's a very, very complex question. In fact, the provost and I were talking about it a few hours ago about all of the options. You really have the two big variables are we get our grant, and if we get tuition flexibility, the board will ultimately decide what is happening to tuition and what sort of reductions would happen within the academy. So you can imagine a model where there's very little tuition increase but a larger reduction. That's going to make it more difficult in the short term to grow because you've got a budget shock going into the system. At the same time, you're saying, okay, and we're going to change our enrollment substantially. At another extreme, where the total effect in terms of revenues based on tuition increases and grant reductions are such that you could take a fair bit of growth. So there's no, at this point, until we know the parameters we're going to work in, we don't know what the optimal model would be. The other question, of course, is what is the marginal cost of educating a new student? So, for example, in some programs, current tuition may be enough to cover the incremental costs. In other programs, there's not a chance. And so those things have to be factored in. But it's a complex series of interrelationships that we'll have to carefully consider once we know the situation we're dealing with. And I can tell you right now, for next year, well, is it tomorrow, Steve, or today? Today. We've opened admissions for next year. So our tuition for international students for next year, it's all set. There's so many things that are now set or being set for the next budget year. Our degrees of freedom will not be as great as we might like. So we will be doing some serious multi-year planning.
Hi, Bill Chung. I volunteer with the Senate. Thank you for your proactive approach to look at the budget. As we expect, there will be cut. I think we ought to also remember that in 2008, 2009, 2010, we had very tough financial years facing the university. And yet we were able to do it and survive well. Mm-hmm. So I think we have that experience to help us go through and sail through the next sea of storm. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Bill. There is a lot of experience out there. And, as I'm saying to chairs and deans, talk to colleagues in Ontario. How did they manage it? How have they dealt with their curriculum? I'm talking to administrative leaders. Talk to your colleagues elsewhere. The advantage of not having to create everything de novo is huge. We don't have to make the same mistakes others have done. Yes? Please stand up and introduce yourself.
Konstantin Tebenev, graduate student at Department of History and Classics. So Concordia University of Edmonton has allowed its students to go on strikes on Friday, on 20th or 27th of September. And I wonder if University of Alberta is considering some actions like that to allow students to go for strikes when they're organized, or if University of Alberta leadership has any strong stance or position in terms of upcoming climate catastrophe, and how it would fit to sort of this billboard campaign which we all have been talking for a while now. Thank you.
Okay. Our approach is, as a public institution, we never take positions on issues like that as an institution. Our role is to allow people to comment everywhere. We don't restrict and we don't encourage participation. We do have a contract with our students that spells out under what conditions classes can be canceled. And it leaves it to departments and individual faculty members to make those decisions. So the provost wrote the deans, informed them of the university doesn't take a position on this, and pointed out here is what our governing body, the General Faculties Council, has approved. And if classes make the decision to do it, then that's up to them. No pressure one way or the other from the university. Yes.
Thank you, Nat Hurley, Faculty of Arts. I also understand we have a new equity, diversity, and inclusion plan at the University of Alberta, and one of the ways that it seems that we can meet some equity, diversity, and inclusion targets is the expansion and increase of our student body. One of the things that has been observed over the course of the conversations about the EDI plan is that our professoriate frequently does not look like or reflect our student body. And I wonder if under these conditions of budgetary change, you could comment on strategies we might
Sure.
be exploring for meeting our EDI targets in terms of the way our faculty and staff look. Thank
Yeah.
you.
So in terms of knowing what will happen in terms of faculty turnover and renewal, until we actually know that, we don't know what tools there will be put in place. Clearly, if we don't have faculty renewal, our ability to diversify is severely constrained. Depending on the limits or the magnitude of those constraints, that would inform things. As I think you're all aware, or some of you would be aware, that the provost has a fund, for example, for Indigenous scholars, so that if any faculty comes with a outstanding Indigenous scholar, regardless of department, regardless of faculty, we have resources set aside to make that higher. And so depending on what happens, those are some tools that we do have at our disposal, even today. What time is it? Last year I didn't have my phone up here, so any other questions? Okay, if not, I want to thank you all for coming. We will be keeping the community informed as things unfold. We'll all be looking for what happens on October the 24th. As I indicated, what we learn on the 24th will be for the current year, and it will be some time before we get our institutional budget letter. So the budget will say something along the lines of, here's what's happening in post-secondary, but it doesn't indicate how those resources will be parsed out. But we will have a pretty good idea of what will happen. And we can get to work on doing the planning and allocating whatever has to be allocated. To the extent that government has said that they know we're partway through a budget year and they would take that into consideration. In many ways, the big one is probably going to be March's budget for the subsequent year. And there may be more heavy lifting associated with that. So we will keep everybody informed as things unfold. Final couple of things. I just want to remind everybody that the University of Alberta is one of the major supporters of the City of Edmonton's United Way campaign. And every year I remind this group how important it is for those of us who are employees at the university to stand up and make a contribution. We are one of the largest supporters of the United Way in the city, and it's important that we step up and play our part. So I would encourage you, if you're a donor, consider increasing your donation. If you've never made a donation, I would encourage you to consider doing that. And then the final thing is today, I think most of you will have received an employee engagement survey. This is a part of a long-term strategy with NHR to look at employee engagement. It's a very important survey. It'll establish a baseline as we go forward. I would encourage you to take it very, very seriously and to fill it out when you get back to your offices. So with that, I want to thank you all for coming, and I look forward to working with you and dealing with some of those shared challenges. This is a very important institution, and if we work together, we can make it even better. Thank you very much.